of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I found favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, and knead it and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant who hastened to prepare it. And then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he said, "There in the tent." And then one said, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent entrance behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age. It had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I have grown old and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?" And the Lord said to Abram, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I'm old? Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At the set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "Oh yes, you did laugh." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So if you were confused at all by the opening of the reading today, it was not Isla's fault. It's not your fault. I've read this text hundreds of times, and I have to admit, I can't claim any clarity on the beginning of this story. God appears to Abraham, and then guests show up. Visitors arrive and become guests. Did God talk to Abraham, and then the guests arrived? Or did the narrator tell us God is appearing as guests? Or did God talk to Abe and then send the guests? Or did Abe leave the conversation with God to go welcome the guests? Or did the narrator just use God and the visitors interchangeably and let us try to sort it all out a couple thousand years later? The answer is a big old "we don't know," which is always followed by, "Does it matter?" Well, the answer is yes and no. However the visitors arrive, whether they are related to God or not, however these visitors arrived, Abraham's response is the same. It's hospitality. It's opening his home. It's opening his heart. Opening his home and his heart. Hospitality was an important thing to Abraham and to Sarah and the Jewish community that follows them throughout history. From these stories of Abraham and Sarah that we've been exploring in our church family lately, to the community after the Exodus, traveling and not having a home, to Elijah, the great prophet, relying on the hospitality of a widow who was struggling. All these stories of people in a strange land, living as an alien in a place that was not their home, and the importance of taking care of each other on that journey. It is core, historically, to the Jewish community and to the faith journey. Abraham offers these visitors space to sit and to rest, and then food and shelter. He offers them conversation, relationship. They talk, they visit, They break bread. And not just cooked dough, they break bread together. And that expression still gets used in our world today. We know what it means to break bread. Breaking bread doesn't mean that you sat nearby and consumed food. We do that all the time in restaurants with people, but we couldn't call it breaking bread together. Breaking bread with someone suggests connection, relationship. They made space for each other in that time and space. The travelers, they stopped. They stopped and allowed themselves to be welcomed, to be received. They stopped and were brought in by a family. They stopped their journey, and it impacted that moment for them. It impacted their lives. The pause was as important as the journey. They made space for each other in that time and place. The family stopped what they were doing, and they were present with their visitors. They stopped and made food. They stopped to listen, and their journeys were impacted as well. Not only did they all stop, you can see that it is an honor to do so. Abraham's practically begging to let the visitors care for him, let him care for them. It is important to care for others. More important often than what it was we were so wrapped up in doing. Not only do they stop, they give the honored guests their best. The visitors agree when they stop. They agree to stop for bread and shade. That's all Abraham offers them at first, bread and shade. And he shows up with bread, milk, meat. This is like going to McDonald's and ending up with a steak dinner. He got more than they expected. And by the end of the visit, the guests are making bold predictions, making pronouncements about God, and Sarah is laughing. How many of you have missed moments like this over the last 18 months? Food and relaxation, intimate conversation and laughter. Things some of us have been craving during the pandemic. Things that are life-giving. Life-giving. And so often they've been made complicated by our pandemic limitations, by our fears, by the realities around us. Relationship is something we have missed in different ways. We've been learning that those closest to us may be the only ones we can lean on. We've been frustrated by those trying to get too close to us. We've been losing connection and building up a guilt reflex when we get too close to each other. We do a whole, oh, wait, is it okay? When we do start to have time together. It's complicated because we don't know how to feel about closeness and connection. It's life-giving, but right now it has also been life-endangering. But we still need it. We still need those relationships, even if we can't make the physical proximity we have wanted, even if we still need to put ourselves in timeout every once in a while because we get a little carried away with breaking down our barriers and getting too close. We know the life-giving nature of relationship. We have been longing for it, for food, relaxation, a conversation with someone new, and laughter. All the gifts of relationship. Of course, we also have example of relationships forged during the pandemic, right? It's not like we just forgot how to relate. We've seen new members in the church who started coming just during the pandemic. We see new partners in ministry that we've started making connections with through this pandemic. It's not like we can't do it, and our youngest among us have been showing us how to do it. Students have been meeting new classes online, meeting new classmates, new teachers, going about the normal things. They've been building relationships, meeting friends, playing games online before there ever was a pandemic. They're really good at this relationship in digital space. Other folks have started new jobs. Adults are starting to figure out how to be authentic online. But it takes some intentionality. We have to actually stop and pause sometimes because relationships don't seem to work like they used to. To be safe and build relationship, two things that are equally important, it takes even more intentionality. We have to find ways to be in relationship because it's just core to who we are. However, those guests ended up in the story, whoever those guests were, they, Abraham and Sarah, all made choices to be present in that time and space. And God showed up. In our story, Abraham and Sarah make a choice to stop, to open their hearts, to open their lives. They chose to break bread, to spend time, to share, to connect, and to laugh. How are we doing in that area? How are you doing in the relationship world? Who are we making time for? And what are we making time to do? Who are you spending time with? And how are you spending it? Who are you breaking bread with? Whether it's over FaceTime, sitting at a park or cafe, or sharing a meal together in a home. These seem like simple questions, but they can have such a profound impact on us. How easily can we stop connecting to others? And how easy is it really to stop and connect? How open are we to connection with new faces? And where is God in that moment? One of the best stories, metaphors, parables of relationship I've ever heard comes from the songwriter Brian Sergio, one of our UCC colleagues, who writes the song Table of Friendship and Love. It's half song, it's half story. I'll read it to you as poetry. Brian was doing a youth retreat. When one of the kids came to tell his story to him, it caught Brian off guard because the kid was, as he described him, a heavy metal kid. And he didn't expect the warm fuzzy story to come from him. These are the lyrics that Brian writes. I met this teenage heavy metal freak. He blew my mind away when I found out what he did at his school one day. He said, I've never gotten into all those cliquey groups at school. I mean, someone's always left out, but everybody's cool. But then he went on this church retreat and he heard how Jesus talked about a table where everyone belongs. He said, I got this wild idea. At first I had to think it through. You can't be too direct these days with religious stuff at school. He said, I even said a prayer that God would show me what to do. And he told me exactly what he did. He said, I found an empty table in the cafeteria, put a sign in the middle that said friendship and love. No one needs a clique here. There's a place for everyone. A table of friendship and love. He said, at first I sat there all alone, feeling kind of like a jerk. He started thinking maybe this idea is not going to work. But it was like a sign from heaven when this freshman nerd walked up and said, is this for real? And the metalhead kid said, yep. So they sat and ate their lunch together, the thrasher and the nerd, and it was like they sent a message that was way too deep for words. And it didn't take long before everyone heard about this radical new thing going on at that table in the cafeteria with a sign in the middle that said friendship and love. No one needs a clique here. There's a place for everyone at a table of friendship and love. And he said, you won't believe it, man, but at our school each day, we've got jocks and heads and nerds and freaks in every social class and race, breaking bread together, and though we're not allowed to pray, when the walls come down like that, how can God be far away? How can God be far away from a table of friendship and love? I hear a lot in our world from people who want to make religion more a part of every organization around them, who want schools to do the faithing for us, who want society to structure everything around faith. And I think they've all missed what this kid knew, which is that faith is about relationships with each other and God. And when we take time to build our relationship with God, other people come into our circle. When we take time to welcome other people into our circle, how can God be far away? It's not about rules. It's not about structures. It's not about getting everybody to agree. It's about loving each other and making room for each other and letting the walls fall down. We know this is the best approach to anti-racism. We know this is how lives are transformed and minds are opened to gender identities, sexual identities, and expressions. We know this is how the gender gap gets bridged. We know it's through relationships. It's when people's expectations are shattered in experiential moments with other people. It's when their biases are confronted not by an outside yelling voice, but from someone intimate and close in their own eyes where they can't ignore what they have seen. It's in the vulnerability of one person, inviting them to match. When suddenly we see each other as people. And amazingly, we start to see what God imagined all along. That beloved community. Male and female created in the image of God and everything in between. People carrying the breath of God and sharing it as a blessing with each other. Every word we speak and every breath we take. People bound in relationship, willing to get up from what has been comfortable, has been known, and go into something more, something deeper, something more inclusive that pulls in the totality of God's people. Church, next week we will be hosting others. We don't know who. Rainbow Day every year is completely random. The first year we had 20 members of this church, and we had 50 in worship and 80 in our workshops and things before the day was over. And it wasn't just people coming for a free lunch. The second year we had 80 in worship and over 100 between the workshops. There was no pandemic to worry about. We just invited the world in. We didn't know where all of them came from. We were thankful for news articles, for reports, for people sharing it on social media. But a lot heard about it from a friend. Most felt like they had been invited in. And they came with questions. How do I love my daughter who's told me she's gay? How do I still love my dad who hates me because I'm trans? How do I get over hating myself because I can't define who I am on any of these labels? We heard stories like this from so many people over the years. Last year we did Rainbow Day online, and it was still a joyous celebration. This year we're coming back together, and we know there will be education opportunity with workshops. We know there will be a worship celebration time, but we have no idea what God's going to do. We have no idea who's going to come into our space, and maybe it'll just be us. If it is, Lisa's going to have a lot of food for us to eat. It'll be different this year. We're not painting faces. That's a little too close. But we're still going to welcome each other in. We're going to welcome others in. And God won't be far away. God won't be far away. I want to invite you to think about who you might invite to come next Sunday. Whether you give them the Zoom link or you meet them here. Or you meet them at Starbucks for breakfast and then come over together. Remember, I've always told you don't invite somebody to a movie and then say, I'll see you there maybe. Or a ball game and say, maybe we'll see each other there. If you invite somebody to go do something, you pick each other up or you meet there together. You take the intentionality. Who can you stop and invite in? And who will you be ready to open your heart to Will you come ready to listen to others? Or maybe when somebody is ready to listen, will you be courageous enough to share with them? I don't know how close you're feeling to God these days. I don't know how close you're feeling to other people these days. But I know if we make room for others, if we don't know where else to start, we'll just start making room for others. God won't be far away. Amen.
Amen.